Thank you. Sometimes I know it seems, folks, like everybody's responsible for everything, and it's really not true. There are two basic ways in our legal system that people acquire responsibility to someone else. One is obviously by making a contract. I agree to sell you a car for $10,000. You owe me $10,000. I owe you a car because we have a contractual arrangement between us. Covenants recorded on the property create essentially a contract between all of the owners in that community. And so responsibilities, legal obligations arise from there. But in this seminar, we're talking really about tort obligations and tort liability. The law will impose responsibility on somebody who has no legal relationship with somebody else if it can be shown that one party didn't behave reasonably. We use the word due care. And the lack of due care we call negligence. And if the lack of due care results in somebody being hurt, and that somebody being the kind of person that would foreseeably be hurt by that lack of reasonable care, then we impose liability in the absence of any other relationship on that person who's careless. And that's really what we're talking about here. Yes, I understand there could be CC&Rs on communities that require certain maintenance standards or that talk about common area equipment, but most likely most of these associations of you attending on this seminar don't. So in the tort world, this really starts with knowledge. If you do not have knowledge of a dangerous condition, then that is one defense on liability for that condition. So it begins with, did we know there was a dangerous condition? However, if you aren't reasonably diligent in managing your property, and the reason you don't know about the dangerous condition is because you haven't been reasonably diligent in inspecting the property, then that itself can be considered negligence. So, for example, back in college, I worked in the supermarkets as a retail clerk. There was always an employee that had to every hour sign a log that said they had walked the entire store and inspected the entire floor every single hour. Well, why was that? Because the store wanted to show that they had been reasonably diligent in policing the floor. And in grocery stores, of course, where you have water and spills and the produce department, grapes on the floor, we can never guarantee that the floor will always be clear and will never have any spots in it. But by very regularly inspecting the store, that is one defense. But if you don't even go look and somebody slips on a grape, that itself, the lack of the inspection, can be considered negligence. So this really starts with having some periodic inspection. Now that period may be dictated by your consultant, by the manufacturer, by a number of sources, but that's really where it begins. Now, the plaintiff trial attorney, Sean Claggett, told me last week, had the association simply had an inspection program in place, even had they not been able to discover this corroded piece of the crossbar, he said they probably wouldn't even been in this lawsuit because he would have not had a case. So that was really the story within the story of the Lamplight Village case, is not that they were a guarantor that everything on the property is absolutely safe at all times, but by not being able to prove that they were reasonably diligent in looking at the equipment and trying to make sure it was in good shape, that was what the plaintiff attorney really pounced on. And apparently, looking at the punitive damage award, the jury was angry enough that it felt the lack of care was not only negligent, but was something more, so that punitive damages could be awarded. So we begin with the concept of inspection. Once we have inspection, then we're put on notice. When we see a dangerous condition in the property or something that requires repair, maintenance, with the swing set, maybe tightening the bolts and nuts, whatever that may be, then the next step, once we have that notice, is then to show that we took reasonable action. And that reasonable action can be a complete continuum of possible responses. It really depends upon what the issue is. if the association learns through its inspection, or by the way, it could learn through a report from a homeowner or tenant that there's something very seriously wrong with the property, whether it be a play set or a balcony railing or a trip and fall hazard, it depends on what the situation is as to what the response of the association is. Now, if you know that a crossbar is seriously corroded, that's probably going to dictate that as soon as you know about that, you're going to do what? Well, you're going to close off the swing set immediately. You're going to put tape around it and put a sign saying, dangerous, do not use, repairs pending, something like that. So that action is the next thing that you'll be judged on. Now, we have a concept of reasonable diligence. So certain things obviously are so dangerous that they require pretty much immediate emergency action. Other things may not be quite as substantial and require at least reasonable process moving forward to resolve the problem. Of course, when you're talking about physical danger, physical injury, seems to me the quicker, the more swiftly and efficiently you move towards resolution of making something safe, the better. So at each point in the process, the inspection, the notice, how you respond to the notice, how you resolve the issue that you learn about is something that, if somebody is hurt, is going to be scrutinized by a lawyer, by an expert, or if it goes this far, even by a jury. So the process of risk management on this really absolutely begins with preventive maintenance. I think if we could, Sally and I stopped the seminar and we only had 5 minutes, we would just repeat preventive maintenance about 20 times. And that is the concept that we're really trying to point to, is that inspections and preventative maintenance can discover things before they become a major problem like these poor folks and the poor young man, Thompson, at Lamplight Village.